The rain poured relentlessly over the city streets, washing the neon lights into long, shimmering streaks that blurred into the puddles below. The night was heavy with a sense of solitude, and the cold pressed against every exposed inch of skin, turning breaths into visible mist. In the midst of this desolate urban storm, Daniel maneuvered his car cautiously, the windshield wipers fighting a losing battle against the sheets of water. Life had taught him to expect the unexpected, but nothing could have prepared him for the sight that suddenly froze him in his tracks. There, on the corner under the faint glow of a broken street lamp, stood a woman drenched to the bone, cradling a small bundle against her chest. The baby's cries cut through the rain with a rawness that seemed to demand attention, a stark sound of helplessness that tugged at something deep inside him. Daniel's instincts, honed over years of raising his daughter alone, kicked in without hesitation. He abandoned caution, stepped into the puddles, and approached her, the water soaking through his shoes, the chill biting at his resolve, yet he felt an inexplicable pull he could not ignore. Her face was obscured by strands of dark hair plastered against her cheeks, and her eyes, when they finally lifted to meet his, were hollow, wet, and wide with a kind of despair that seemed too immense for words. She did not speak, but the trembling of her hands and the desperate clutch on her child conveyed a story of suffering he did not yet know but immediately understood. Daniel wrapped his coat around her and the baby, feeling the weight of the child in his arms, the tiny heartbeat frantic and fast, as if mirroring the storm around them. In that instant, he knew this was not a mere coincidence, but a crossing of fates, two lives colliding under the unforgiving rain. The woman's name was Maya, a nurse who had spent the past several years caring for others while silently carrying the burdens of her own. She had dedicated herself to her patients, offering solace, hope, and healing, even as her own world unraveled beneath her. A week ago, a fire had destroyed her apartment building. She had lost everything, the roof over her head, her belongings, her life savings, and worst of all, the sense of security she had tried to cling to for herself and her newborn son. That night, she had wandered the streets aimlessly, the baby swaddled in a soaked blanket, trying to find a place where someone might look at her with more than pity. But the city had been cruelly silent, indifferent to her plight, and the relentless rain mirrored the anguish that had been swelling inside her since the catastrophe. Her tears, mingled with the rain, blurred her vision and dulled her senses, yet she did not cry out for help. She had no strength left for that. She had nothing left but hope, and that fragile hope had led her, unknowingly, to Daniel. Daniel, too, was no stranger to loss, though his struggles were of a different nature. Life had handed him a series of challenges: an early divorce, the death of his wife in a tragic accident, and the overwhelming responsibility of raising his daughter alone while trying to balance a demanding job. He had learned to survive on little sleep, determination, and sheer love for his child. He understood exhaustion, fear, and despair, but he also knew the power of resilience. The sight of Maya and her baby, abandoned in the rain, struck something primal inside him, a need to protect, to nurture, to mend what life had broken. He guided her to his car, helping her settle into the passenger seat, all the while feeling the tension in her shoulders slowly ease under his quiet presence. The baby, still whimpering, nestled against Daniel's chest, and a strange serenity began to settle over the chaos of that moment, as if the storm had suddenly shifted its focus, acknowledging the fragile connection that had formed between them. As Daniel drove, the city lights glinting off the wet asphalt, he observed Maya in the rearview mirror. Her eyes were distant, haunted by memories he could only imagine, yet there was a flicker of something fragile and human there, a recognition that someone had seen her, truly seen her, in the midst of her desolation. He didn't ask questions, understanding instinctively that sometimes words could drown a person in their own sorrow rather than save them. Instead, he offered the simplest gesture of care, warmth. He drove to his modest apartment, a place that had been both his sanctuary and his battlefield, and he prepared a warm bath for the baby while offering Maya dry clothes and a blanket. The air inside was thick with the smell of rain and damp wool, but it also carried the faint scent of home, of safety, something Maya hadn't known in days. Over the next hours, a tentative trust began to grow between them. Daniel watched as Maya fed her baby, her fingers shaking slightly but with a determination that mirrored his own. She spoke little, yet when she did, her words were soft, tinged with exhaustion and disbelief. She confessed, quietly, that she had lost everything but her child, and in that admission, she revealed the depth of her despair. Daniel listened without interruption, offering the kind of presence that heals not through words, but through steady understanding. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Maya allowed herself to breathe, to feel that perhaps the world had not entirely abandoned her. And for Daniel, there was a stirring of something he had long thought dormant, a sense of purpose beyond the responsibilities he had known. This encounter, brief and unplanned, had shaken the foundations of his solitary life, revealing the possibilities of connection, care, and maybe, in time, love. By the time dawn crept over the horizon, washing the city in a gentle light that made the wet streets glisten like silver, Maya felt a cautious sense of hope blooming within her. The storm outside had not yet ceased, but inside the apartment, a fragile warmth prevailed. She watched Daniel preparing breakfast, the baby now sleeping peacefully, and she realized that despite everything she had lost, there was still kindness in the world, raw, unassuming, and unexpected. And in that realization, she understood that hope, however small and delicate, could survive even the harshest storms. Daniel, noticing the shift in her demeanor, felt an unexpected connection, a bond forged not through time, but through shared human experience, compassion, and an unspoken understanding of what it meant to fight for another's survival. In that quiet apartment, amidst the soft rain and the muted city sounds, two broken souls began to find a tentative alignment, a prelude to a story neither had anticipated but both were now unwilling to ignore. The following days blurred into a rhythm neither had anticipated, yet both found themselves adapting with surprising ease. Daniel continued his routine, but now it included the small rituals that tethered Maya to a semblance of stability. He watched her as she bathed her son, preparing formula, humming softly in a voice that carried the remnants of her former warmth, and he marveled at her quiet strength. The apartment, modest and unassuming, became a sanctuary not only for the child but for Maya herself. Slowly, the despair that had weighed so heavily upon her began to lift, replaced by a cautious sense of trust, a belief that the world could still offer more than pain and loss. She realized that survival was not merely about enduring hardships, but about allowing oneself to be seen, to accept care, and to believe, however tenuously, that life could offer second chances. Daniel, too, was changed. His daughter, initially wary of Maya, soon warmed to her presence, drawn to the gentle care she offered and the way she laughed softly when the baby did something endearing. Daniel watched these moments with an unfamiliar tenderness, recognizing in them the possibility of family redefined, not bound by blood or history, but by compassion, empathy, and shared humanity. The nights were no longer filled solely with fatigue and worry, they now carried conversations, quiet laughter, and the faint hope of something enduring. He marveled at how swiftly life could pivot when the unexpected intervened, and how resilience could manifest not only in survival but in the ability to embrace new connections, new beginnings, and the delicate threads of trust that formed between them. One rainy afternoon, reminiscent of the night they had met, Maya stood at the window, cradling her baby, staring out at the city with a mixture of fear and anticipation. She had begun applying for work again, using the nursing skills that had once been her pride and passion. Each application was a reminder of the fragility of her existence, yet each step also rekindled her sense of purpose. Daniel entered quietly, handing her a cup of tea, his presence steady and reassuring. They exchanged no words at first, but the unspoken understanding between them spoke volumes. Life had not erased the pain of the past, but it had provided an opportunity to rebuild, to create a space where healing could flourish. Maya realized that trust, once shattered, could be carefully reconstructed through consistent acts of care and the unwavering presence of someone who refused to abandon her. Days turned into weeks, and the apartment grew lively with the presence of children and laughter, slowly erasing the echoes of isolation and despair. Daniel and Maya found a rhythm that balanced work, parenting, and the subtle exploration of emotions neither had anticipated. She discovered in him a steadfast reliability, a nurturing spirit tempered by experience, while he discovered in her a resilience and warmth that defied the tragedies she had endured. Their bond deepened, not through dramatic gestures, but through the quiet accumulation of trust, understanding, and mutual care. The baby thrived under their shared devotion, and Daniel's daughter, once wary of change, now embraced the new dynamic with surprising openness, their small family slowly coalescing into something vibrant and enduring. Then came a day when Maya received a letter from her old employer, a hospital that had valued her expertise and had been informed of her misfortune. They offered her a position, a chance to rebuild her professional life while caring for her child. The news brought tears, not of despair, but of gratitude and relief. She realized that she could reclaim not only her independence but also the sense of identity she had feared lost forever. Daniel stood beside her as she read the letter, his hand brushing against hers in quiet celebration. The moment was unremarkable in the eyes of the world, yet monumental in the narrative of their intertwined lives, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of compassion. As autumn arrived, painting the city in shades of gold and amber, Daniel and Maya walked together in the park with their children, the baby now toddling with tentative confidence and Daniel's daughter holding Maya's hand as if she had always been part of their world. They laughed, stumbled, and celebrated small victories, the first steps, the first words, the first shared meals, that collectively symbolized the triumph over despair. The memory of that stormy night, the rain-soaked streets, and the fragile hope that had guided them together lingered as a quiet reminder of life's unpredictability and the extraordinary outcomes that can emerge from moments of vulnerability. Maya often reflected on the paradox of her journey. Losing everything had led her to a life she had not imagined, a life richer not in material wealth but in love, connection, and shared purpose. Daniel, too, recognized that the chance encounter had brought into his life a depth of experience and a warmth of companionship that he had long believed unattainable. Together, they had transformed tragedy into opportunity, despair into resilience, and isolation into a family knit not by circumstance alone, but by choice, courage, and enduring hope. In the end, the rain that had once seemed like a symbol of loss became a reminder of renewal, washing away the remnants of fear and leaving behind fertile ground for growth, love, and the extraordinary beauty of second chances.